fabulous fabric from the land of the Five Rivers.
Years ago, when we came to Los Angeles, I really believed that the greatness of the Raiders would be in its future.
Good, everybody. We are back, man. Me and Ray, we are back to talk Raider football. It's that time of the year, man. Preseason is wrapping up. We got the Raiders and Cowboys game coming up. That's going to be definitely interesting. Man, it's another edition of the show. What's going on, Ray, man? How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. I'm just suiting up for the final week of preseason. Our eyes are set to week one, preparing for the Broncos. So some players got to go out there and perform and try to make that 53-man roster, and we're about to find out who the members of the Raiders are going to be.
Yeah, I mean, let's get into it, man. It's going to be Raiders versus Cowboys. I mean, obviously, it's the last preseason game, so it's not going to be the most exciting game. But if you're a football fan, you're a Raider fan, you're definitely going to be excited. But what should we expect tomorrow against the Cowboys?
Well, over the preseason, the Cowboys have been giving up a ton of rushing yards per game. So in a room that we talked about on the last episode on Tuesday night was somebody's got to really emerge in this running back room. So I want to see some more explosive plays. Guys like Sincere McCormick, Zamir White, I would like to see him get in a few explosive plays just to show that they could take advantage of a weak run defense and that they can create big time plays back there with the absence of Josh Jacobs. And we'll kind of get into that later. But personally, I want to see the explosion in the run game. And I just want to see this defense continue to create turnovers. And I want to see a few guys edge out a roster spot here.
Yeah, it's going to be the battle of the backups. And it's going to be a lot of depth battles, to be honest with you. It's going to be depth pieces. The backup QB spot, backup running back, backup wide receiver spot, backup tight end, backup, you name it. That's pretty much what the players that are going to be battling out to see if they can stay on the roster. It's going to be fun to see because we're looking forward to see who can possibly make that last impression. Man, I was gonna say something, but we're gonna save that for later, man. But I guess we can get into it, man. Roster bubble, guys that we feel like that have a chance, but they need to leave a really good impression on the coaching staff after pretty much a preseason and training camp. But this is the last impression that some of these players have. So let's lead off, man. A guy that started off well in the preseason. Against the 49ers, had a really good game. Really, a guy that I know you're big on, Ray, is right tackle Dalton Wagner. I think that he needs to make a good impression this game. I think there's a chance that he can possibly stay on, but hey, man, it is an uphill battle at the end of the day. Like you got Illuminor, you have Thayer Mumford, and you got other guys over there that can easily surpass him on that spot. So I think that he needs to make a good impression in order for him to stay on the roster. But he did struggle against the Rams. I didn't think he had his best game compared to the 49ers. It was like night and day. And I think that, for him to just finish the preseason right, maybe give him a chance to possibly stay on the roster. I know that the Raiders really highly sought out him. Like, they pretty much were trying to bring him in as a rookie free agent, which they did. But I think they gave him probably one of the highest guaranteed money. I think him and maybe some other player, I'm not sure. But I think he was a guy that they really valued bringing in. So there's a chance where he can stay on the roster, but he just needs to leave a good impression tomorrow against the Cowboys.
Well, yeah, that's pretty interesting. Dalton Wagner, yeah, that kind of caught me by surprise a little bit. I didn't know you were going to go that kind of route.
Yeah.
I've got kind of penciled in on the roster bubble guard Natane Moody, because the Dalton Wagner, I don't know. I agree with you. I think he needs to have a big game. I didn't think his Rams performance was terrible by any means.
Yeah.
I definitely think he's a developmental backup right tackle.
Yeah.
And depending on how this tackle room kind of shakes out, yeah, I mean, I kind of like your take. For me, though, it was I went kind of guard Natane Moody. There's been a lot of hype on him.
Yeah.
I think he's kind of struggled a bit this preseason in lack of words. Just consistency is his problem, just putting it together a full game. So on the offensive line, I've got guard Natane Moody.
Yeah, no, I have him too. I mean, and he's a guy that played great against the Niners. I think he was like one of the highest rated PFF grades this preseason was Natane Moody. But then you come back to that Rams game, he showed a different side of his game. He didn't play as well. But I agree, Natane Moody is definitely one of those guys that he has a chance, but he needs to leave a good impression. And I think the thing with Dalton Wagner, he does have people in front of him. You got I think Heron. I keep forgetting his name, but you got a few tackles in front of him.
Justin Heron, Thayer Mumford, Jermaine Illuminor.
Exactly. So and you got to remember, Heron, they got him in a trade with the Patriots. So you know that the coaching staff is familiar with him. So he needs to make a good impression, I think, in order for him to stay on the roster. Wagner, I see the ceiling. I see that he has a chance where if he's developed properly, he could possibly be a good player for the Raiders. But
I think for the first time in a while that I think a lot of these players, the Raiders are going to have to cut a player. And what happens is you cut them and then they go through the waiver process. I think that those are going to be players that are picked up that typically in years past, we would have been able to just stash them on the practice squad. Mm-hmm. But I think that we're developing enough depth at this point that there might be some players that we cut in hopes of getting back to the practice squad that they're going to get signed to another 53-man roster.
Mm-hmm. And let's go to the defensive side of the ball. Okay. And another guy that I feel like is on the fringe, roster bubble. He has a chance to stay on the roster, but he really needs to make a good impression this last preseason game to give him a chance to possibly stay on the roster. Is D tackle Nesta Jade Silvera. The coaches and players vouch for him, including Max Crosby. Which is, hey, man, if Max Crosby's co-signing you, that's a good sign. The guy's the leader of the Raiders, the defense, the face of the franchise, great player in his own right. And he's saying that this guy could be a big part of this team. So he definitely believes in the player, but he hasn't shown up in games. And that's the thing. You can be a good practice player, but at the end of the day, when the lights come on, you got to be able to turn it on and you got to be able to make plays. And maybe the Raiders feel like, hey, they can keep him on the practice squad. Don't need to have, because think about it. A lot of teams are watching other people's preseason games. They're watching the film. I'm sure they hear things, but then obviously if they're watching film, they're watching preseason games. And if they're not seeing, Nesta showing up on preseason games, maybe the Raiders can feel like, hey, you know what? Maybe we can squeeze him in the practice squad. Even though, they believe him as a player, they feel like strategically speaking, they can keep him on the practice squad and go from there and obviously develop him from there.
That's interesting. We kind of think similar in that. I'm going to also stay in the defensive tackle room. I'm going to go Matthew Butler. We've had a missing news article out from Matthew Butler for the past 2 weeks now when it comes to preseason games.
Yeah,
he's just waiting on a sighting, waiting for a big splash play. Now he's flashed things here and there. If you look on one-on-one and getting off the line of scrimmage, winning the hand battles, he's had small victories, but they haven't led into positive impact plays, if that makes sense. So there's evidences on film of him doing good things. It just hasn't translated into a net positive as a result in a sack or a tackle for loss or being disruptive consistently. Mm-hmm. So for me personally, we've been talking about him for the last few weeks, but I think out of that draft class, Matthew Butler, he's definitely on the roster bubble.
Yeah, Matthew Butler is definitely a player that I see. Man, it's gonna be hard for him to make the roster, but maybe there's a chance that he can make a good impression on his coaching staff. Obviously, he was drafted last year, and we'll see how that goes. But my next guy on my roster bubble list is Drake Thomas, linebacker Drake Thomas. Hey, man, we seen the last game. We seen how he put 12 tackles in one half. The guy was all over the place, making plays. And the thing is, he's played well in both preseason games, but he's an undrafted free agent at the end of the day. You got Divine Diablo, who's guaranteed a spot. You have Robert Spillane, guaranteed a spot. Then obviously you got players that the Raiders believe in from last year's class in Luke Masterson. I think he was an undrafted player, but they obviously believe in him as a player, so they might want to continue that. So I think that in order for him to unseat one of those guys, or at least Luke Masterson, and maybe some of these some guys that might be making it as a special teamer, I think he's gonna have to make a good impression against the Cowboys. He's gonna have to continue that good play to give him a chance, because maybe the Raiders feel like, hey, you know what, kind of similar to Nesta Jade, but it's kind of tough with him because he's actually played well in both these preseason games. I think he just needs to continue that trend. And yeah, man, hopefully he has a great game and the Raiders find a way to get him on the roster.
Yeah, it's funny because I've got circled on my paper at the linebacker room Bolton versus Drake Thomas, and I think that these are two friends who are gonna temporarily be competing against one of another for a roster spot. Curtis Bolton flashing special teams, was able to punch the ball out versus the 49ers. He looks like he's kind of turned a corner in year 2 of this system. So a little bit undersized of a guy. Also, I believe he's an undrafted guy as well. But look, Drake Thomas, anytime you can put together 12 tackles in a single half and just be nasty when it comes to run defense, he just kind of feels like that Robert Spillane backup to me. That's going to be a very, very intriguing. Matter of fact, on the defensive side of the football, that's probably the biggest matchup that I'm looking forward to, because these are two young, hungry, passionate players. And this is one of those situations where the cream rises to the crop a little bit and to the top a little bit. And I think that you have an opportunity to come away with a pretty good depth linebacker out of this battle. So, yeah, I agree with you. Curtis Bolton and Drake Thomas, they're in a full-out competition for that linebacker spot.
Yeah, and even Masterson. But I think Masterson is probably – they're going to have to unseat him. And in order for him to unseat Masterson possibly is if he has a great game against the Cowboys. But, yeah, these are guys that we feel like are on the roster bubble. Is there anybody that you want to add that can possibly, if they have a great preseason game, they're on the bubble, they're on the fringe, that they can stay on the roster?
I'm gonna go to the defensive back room, and I'm gonna go Amik Robertson. Amik, he's flashed. That's been the problem. Is he's had opportunity and he just hasn't been able to come away with it so far. Whether it be getting beat in coverage, keeping his eyes, not getting his head turned around, not making plays on the ball when it hits him right in the numbers. Stuff that we would typically see Amik kind of come away with. I just haven't seen that. I kind of expected a bit more of a jump out of him. But I like Amik Robertson. I like him as a player. I like what he brings to the defensive back room. Everybody seems to buy in and love him. But I think this game is huge for Amik. And I think if you see Amik Robertson playing into that, second to maybe even possibly some in the third quarter, I think you should probably watch to pay attention to see if he's a surprise roster cut.
Yeah, I mean, Amik, he so far in the preseason, he's given up 4 for 6, 62 yards with a pass breakup. It sounds not too bad. It's okay, but it's serviceable. But I don't think that's enough when the Raiders pretty much signed, guys like Marcus Peters, Duke Shelley, David Long Jr., and they drafted Jacoian Bennett. That pretty much tells the players that are on the roster, the cornerback room, that some of these guys are going to have a great training camp offseason in order for them to stay on, because the Raiders are looking to upgrade their cornerback room, and some of these players are going to get replaced. And Amik at 5'9", he's still giving up some plays in the past game, even in the third quarter, fourth quarter of a preseason game. It's tough, man. He especially last game against the Rams, he kind of struggled a little bit. Had that drop pick. He did jump it, but he dropped it, and that's probably not a good sign for him. It would have been a great sign if he caught it and, maybe give something the Raiders to think about.
So for
But
that last spot, I've actually got 3 players written down for that one last final spot, and it's between
okay.
Amik Robertson, Sam Webb, and Duke Shelley. I think
Yeah.
Duke Shelley is in that same frame as Amik Robertson, so they kind of were looking at that size of corner, and maybe Duke was going to be looked at as maybe potentially that Amik Robertson replacement, maybe a little bit more production when it came to man coverage in the system. But Duke Shelley is also one of those guys who hasn't had the best preseason. I would say he had pretty good joint practices, and he's flashed here and there in run defense.
Yeah.
But Sam Webb, I'm intrigued by Sam Webb for 2 reasons.
Yeah.
One, he's made the play on the ball when it's come his way, whether it be in practice or in the preseason game. Now, he didn't make some crazy play on the ball, but he took advantage of it when it came his way. Something we haven't seen out of the 2. Duke Shelley has a drop pick. Amik Robertson has a drop pick.
Mm-hmm.
Sam Webb also has that size that you're looking forward to, right? With Brandon Faison going down, I think it opens up an opportunity for a longer, lankier corner to fit in this scheme and system. So keep an eye on Sam Webb for that final roster spot as well.
Yeah, that's a good point because now you have a different skill set. You know what I mean? And I think he adds a little bit to that room, but we'll see how it shakes out. But you know what? Let's just get into those are the players that we feel like are on the roster bubble. We feel like there's a chance for them to make the team if they make a really good impression against the Cowboys. And hopefully they do, and they make it tough on this coaching staff because that's a good problem to have. Mm-hmm. That being said, let's go to our surprise cuts. These are guys that we feel like, we feel like, hey, this is our prediction. We could be wrong. Hopefully we are wrong and they play great, but this is our prediction of players that we feel like are not going to make the team. Every year it happens. Every year there's always going to be a few players that are surprise to the team, surprise to the fan base. We've seen it before. But Ray, take it over, man. Who are your surprise cuts?
All right, my number 1 surprise cut, and it might be a little bit controversial, but hear me out, Raider Nation. I'm going to try to explain myself. Tight end Austin Hooper.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that Cole Fotheringham has had a remarkable preseason. I think that they're really big on Jesper Horsted. They're even pretty big on Hollister behind the scenes. And obviously you've got Michael Mayer. We've seen the opportunities attacking Austin Hooper early in the preseason, wasn't able to come down with anything. So he has 0 receptions, 0 yards in all of preseason. For me personally, I think the upside with the young guys is there. And I think that they feel like they could have something in Cole Fotheringham. And if he goes out there and has a huge game against the Cowboys, say he has another 50-yard plus performance, Cole Fotheringham could easily edge out that 3rd roster spot. And I think that a guy like Jesper Horsted could also find a way onto the roster as well.
Yeah, that's surprising. It's surprising. I didn't have Austin Hooper as a guy that I feel like will be a surprise cut, but that's the whole point. Surprise cut.
Yep.
I see what you're saying. I think that they value maybe the veteran leadership that Austin Hooper provides in that room because you got, guys that are going to make that team, I think, in my opinion, are obviously Michael Mayer. And then Jesper Horsted is a second-year player, I believe. He's a young player in that room who hasn't been healthy, so we haven't seen a lot of him this year in this preseason. But it's a guy that the Raiders believe in, and I feel like that kind of that veteran leadership, that veteran player in that room, I think is going to be real helpful for players that are still developing. Because I think, you hear some of the beat writers talk to Michael Mayer about him developing his run blocking and how he values guys like Austin Hooper who are really helpful in that room. And Austin Hooper's kind of embraced that role of being a leader. So I'm not sure.
Yeah, I know.
You know what I mean?
It's definitely a controversial one.
Yeah, like I said, this is surprise cuts. You know what I mean? I'm going to have some guys here that some of you guys might disagree, but I think that Austin Hooper makes it, but you make a point there. You know what I mean? It's not like he looked good in the preseason at the end of the day. Like he has some drops.
And I should add, if Michael Mayer were to, if he would have gotten better in terms of run blocking over the course of the preseason and in training camp, say he came out and was just dominant in the run game, then I could definitely really see them maybe move on from Austin Hooper and go more of those Cole Fotheringham routes. But yeah, I said Austin Hooper. I know it's going to be controversial. I know it's probably not likely. I lean to agree with you that I think that they're going to want to keep a veteran, but it's just like I said, it's a surprise. It's just something to keep an eye out.
Okay, I'm going to go with a guard, Alex Bars. I think he's going to be a surprise cut. He pretty much, it looks like he's lost the battle against Greg Van Roten at that right guard spot. And right now he's competing against, a guy that we mentioned that is on the fringe and has a good chance of making the roster if he plays well this last preseason game, is Netane Moody. They're battling out that backup spot. And if Netane Moody plays well enough next game, gives the coaching staff something to think about, a young player, I think the Raiders could easily move on from a guy like Alex Bars. He does give you a little bit of versatility. He's a good backup player, but we've seen him when he comes into the game, we see where his strengths lies. He's not the greatest pass blocker. He's a good run blocker, but now the Raiders have upgraded. We have more depth this year, which is a good problem to have. And I think that maybe a guy like Alex Bars might be the odd man out this year.
So I've got it flipped. I've got Netane Moody as the surprise cut. I think when I look at Alex Bars, I think he has something that this offensive line covets, and it's an identity in the run game.
Okay.
And I just don't think that Netane Moody's quite there yet. He flashes that aggression that I love out of a nasty guard, but it's just not consistent enough. And he misses quite a bit of blocks as well. So I just kind of went the opposite route. Netane has kind of gotten a little bit of hype, a little bit of a fan favorite since he's gotten reps. But I'm going to say Alex Bars finds a way to make it, to kind of piggyback on what you said on my segment on the tight end room. Mm-hmm. I think they value the veteran guard. I think they value the veteran in that aspect, and they feel like that they can work with him. They have a history with him. He started games for them, so they feel comfortable. Push comes to shove for Alex Bars to go in there and play games.
So the thing with Alex Bars too, they value his versatility, but at the same time, you have a Luminor who has experience in that guard spot. You have a Thayer Mumford that can go right in there, and then you got Netane Moody. You got some other players that can easily, the versatility in that room from player to player is, makes a guy like Alex Bars possibly expendable. I know they like him. I know going into the training camp, like he was a starter in the offseason, which we all looked at. It was like, oh, please no, like come on, like we've seen the Alex Bars experiment as far as a starter. We don't want to see that again. But that being said, like I said, surprise cut, and I understand Netane Moody, but I don't feel like if Netane Moody doesn't make the team, I'm not surprised.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Yeah,
it's not surprised, but I see what you're saying. I because a lot of fans really like Netane Moody. They like him a lot, so it might be a surprise to Raider Nation. But go ahead with your next player that you feel like will be a surprise cut.
Next player, I've actually got defensive tackle Nesta Jade Silvera. To kind of piggyback on where you were talking about the roster bubble, he's got to have a big game, and I think if he plays how he's played the first two preseason games, him and Matthew Butler, I don't think make the roster. I think that they'll both be gone. In hopes that you get Nesta Jade back on the practice squad, whether that happens or not, that's to be seen. But I think defensive tackle Nesta Jade Silvera, I think the veterans just kind of beat those young guys out a little bit. I think Neil Farrell kind of separated himself a little bit, playing the 3-tech in this defense. So it just looks like overall that he's kind of emerged out of those younger guys. So yeah, for me, I've got defensive tackle Nesta Jade Silvera.
Okay, yeah, like for me, it was earlier, like you guys heard me say, I had Nesta Jade as a fringe. Like I feel like if he had a great last preseason game, then that might give the coaching staff a little bit of something to think about. Probably still end up in that practice squad, but I thought like maybe he would be at fringe player roster bubble. But I can see how you put him as a surprise cut. I don't think it would be a surprise if he got cut. I think Matthew Butler, one of the rookies from last year, getting cut would be a surprise, and that's who I have. That D tackle, a combination of Matthew Butler and Neil Farrell, because the addition to that room with John Jenkins, I think he played well, and he makes them expendable. Oh yeah. And like you mentioned, I think Neil Farrell Jr. kind of came back after he was hurt a little bit in training camp. You've seen him make at least some plays, but make it a 4th-down stop, I think, against the Niners. But Matthew Butler, like you don't even hear his name.
No, I don't hear coaches talking about him. Nothing.
I heard maybe some coaches, because the beat writers probably were like, "Hey, is this guy?
Does he exist?
Does he exist?" But no. But all jokes aside, though, like we're not hearing enough about Matthew Butler, and I'm not sure. It might be a sign that he might be expendable. So I think he would be a surprise cut in my book.
Yeah, and no, I piggyback off of that. I think my next one necessarily isn't the biggest surprise, but he is a former draft pick from last year, and I'm going to go running back Britton Brown. Somebody we just haven't seen this preseason, nothing significant. running back room. They're obviously going in and plucking some veterans into that running back room in free agency. Zamir White is supposedly emerging into this offense.
Mhm.
Brandon Bolden is definitely a lock to make the roster, of course.
Yeah.
Amir Abdullah as well. And I, to be honest with you, I think Sincere McCormick has showed enough if they wanted to keep that extra running back, that if he goes out there and has a big game, like I was saying earlier, with the explosive runs against this Cowboys defense, a guy like Sincere McCormick can take advantage of a guy like Britton Brown really not showing much. So the running back room for that last and final spot is going to be big watching in this Cowboys game, because I think that there's going to be an opportunity to make some big explosive plays.
It's possible. And I think that one of last year's surprise, not this year, but last year's surprises was how many running backs the Raiders kept.
Yeah.
They
kept 6.
Yeah, they kept 6. This year, I'm not sure if they do the same. Britton Brown has been hurt a little bit. Sincere McCormick, has he shown enough to really make a roster, make it on this team compared to other players on different position groups? I'm not sure if the Raiders are going to make that call. So I'm not sure Sincere McCormick. I think it's going to be Zamir White. You have obviously Josh Jacobs, Brandon Bolden. I don't get the love affair, but I guess the Patriots connection.
Just one of those guys, man.
One of those guys that knows the system, the coaches love, and it is what it is. They're gonna keep on the roster, and obviously, the Raiders are one of the only teams to keep a fullback with Jacob
Johnson,
fullback. So yeah, and Amir Abdullah, a third down back.
Yep.
So you got those guys, but I'm not sure if they're gonna. Sincere McCormick is gonna make the team. A guy that you mentioned that was a roster bubble for me is going to be surprise cut is Amik Robertson.
Yeah,
I have him as a surprise cut. And the reason why I say surprise, you have a guy that's like a veteran. You got a guy that's made plays with the Raiders. He's a fan favorite. The Raider Nation loves Amik Robertson because he's tough, smart player. He's made plays in the past. You guys even see him on an intro making one of the best plays of last year, taking that fumble return all the way for a touchdown. But I think with the addition to that cornerback room, like the players I mentioned earlier, obviously the competition is close. His size, he's at 5'9". Last game, he kind of struggled a little bit. Like I said, like he was giving up some plays in the past game. I'm like, oh, no, I don't know if that's a good look. Third, fourth quarter of a preseason game, you're going against players that probably are not going to play for that team,
So you think Duke edged him out?
It's possible. And you have to understand, this is a player that was not drafted by this regime. They inherited a guy like Amik Robertson.
Yep.
As much as I like him, and as much as they probably like him, they feel like there's the attachment to him. Like, we didn't really draft this guy.
Yep.
You know what I mean? We want to go with our guys. That's the whole theme of like this whole offseason. We want to go with our guys. Gone is Derek Carr. Gone is this player and that player. And then they're bringing their guys in and kind of shaping this team in the image of the coaching staff and the front office.
That's interesting because, like, okay, say if Sam Webb goes out there and has a dominant game against the Cowboys, could you see Sam Webb even edging out a guy like Duke Shelley?
Hey, it's possible. I mean, that's a guy that they bring him as an under. I think they drafted. Did they draft him? Was it undrafted?
No, he's undrafted.
Undrafted, right? So that's a guy that Dave Ziegler loves his diamond in the roughs. Like, he likes players. He takes pride in finding players where no one else is looking.
Yep.
So yeah, it's possible, but we'll see how it shakes out. I mean, Sam Wood is probably a good example. Honorable mention is a player that's probably in the in that room, so that can possibly make it. But yeah, man, that's pretty much wraps it up. I did have a crazy. This would be a crazy surprise cut. And it's a tough one because I was really looking at it because, look, I was looking at players that weren't necessarily drafted by this regime. And a guy,
where are you going?
And I'm gonna end it with controversial because Raider Nation probably is gonna be like, what are you talking about? And you might say the same thing as well. Malcolm Kuntz. Malcolm Kuntz. And just look at it from this perspective. He wasn't drafted by this regime. You said in the past too, and you made a great point. You said it almost felt like he was in a doghouse early on. We remember that. We remember that infamous clip with Josh McDaniels literally going crazy on Malcolm Kuntz because he touched a quarterback at the time, Derek Carr, last year. And then we really didn't see him come on the field that much. And we're like, what are you talking? Like, why is he not on the field? We can barely get to the quarterback. We need some sacks. The guy that can get to the quarterback. With the way Patrick Graham runs his defense, the types of players he wants rushing the pass, he wants big guys. He wants guys that can stop the run. And that's a weak point for Malcolm Kuntz. He's undersized. Has he improved in that area? Possibly. Who knows? Do the Raiders front office at this time, coaching staff, want to take that risk and bring him back and say, oh, he's improved in that area? An undersized guy like that really doesn't fit their scheme. They're just making it work because it's possible, that they can cut him, maybe trade him, more likely, possibly. But I think that's a guy that can be a surprise cut.
For me, I don't have.
Hey, let me know in the comment section. Let me know in the chat. Let me know. Like, what do you guys think? Like,
everybody tell Pharaoh he's crazy.
Hey, I hope I'm wrong, but we see it all the time.
No, we do.
We see it all the time.
You make a good point. I think this preseason he's actually been my biggest surprise defensive end. I kind of alluded last year. He kind of seemed like he was in the doghouse. You didn't hear much at all in training camp. Like it kind of felt like he was like the Matthew Butler, right? Like you just did not hear of Malcolm Kuntz.
Right.
Then the lights came on. Then the game film came on, and it was clear and evident that Malcolm Kuntz is the best depth pass rusher that the Raiders have. I think it's hard to find a pass rusher in this league who can get after the quarterback consistently, and I think Malcolm Kuntz brings that. So I hear where you're coming from, but I would say that I see Malcolm Kuntz making this roster. And it's going to be close because I think Jordan Willis really made that a tough competition. But I could see Jordan Willis and Malcolm Kuntz both making it.
Right. And it's kind of a situation where, look, Max Crosby's in front of him, Chandler Jones is in front of him, Tyree Wilson's in front of him, and you can make an argument Jordan Willis is in front of him, a guy that they got from the Niners that they probably value too as well. So, and
you can also make a case that defensive end room outside of Max hasn't been very healthy. So they're going to need to keep somebody who can get after the quarterback a little bit. Jordan Willis, more of your natural run defender, so he gives you that big edge. But Malcolm Kuntz is going to be one of those guys if third down situation and Tyree and Chandler are a no-go.
Yeah.
Plug him next to Max Crosby and kind of let him pin his ears back.
No, I get you. That was my surprise cuts.
It's kind of like my Austin Hooper one.
That was kind of my you know what? It's a possibility. Because I felt like fans of the team, Raider Nation, we're more big fans of Kuntz than this coaching staff because we didn't really see too much of him. I felt like maybe this year was probably like where the coaching staff kind of had a whole full off season where he got better as a player. He came into training camp. He looked stronger. He looks like he might be a better player this year, but he still was a player that wasn't drafted by him. He was undersized. And
I heard Josh McDaniels come out. Was it last week's press conference? Yeah. But Malcolm Kuntz got brought up. And man, he just kind of seemed enthusiastic about Malcolm, about how he's kind of really taken a step forward, how he thinks that he can make some plays for them this year. So
yeah,
we'll see. Maybe he kind of turned a new leaf this season with the coaching staff.
But you know what though? I seen Josh McDaniels answer a Waller question, and then 2 weeks later Waller gets traded.
Touche.
Yeah, but yeah, man, that pretty much wraps up the roster bubble and surprise cuts. Let us know in the chat, man. Let us know in the comment section your thoughts, man. Who are the surprise cuts? Who do you guys foresee making the roster? Your players that you feel like have a chance to make this team, players that you look forward watching in that Cowboys game. Let us know. Let us know in the comment section, in the chat. Also, man, we keep forgetting to do this, man. Make sure to hit that like button. Man, hit that like button is very much appreciated. Hey, we appreciate the support. The algorithm is very real. So in a good way to support us, if you like what you're hearing, you support the content, just hit that like button. And subscribe if you haven't subscribed. And also, if you guys want to be notified for future content, anytime we go live, make sure to hit that notification bell. It's very important, man. But we appreciate your support. But we're not done yet. We are not done yet. Our last segment of the day. In other news, this week, we heard about the Miami Dolphins. They made a call, supposedly, as a report, to the Raiders about Josh Jacobs to see if he's available. And, the Raiders, from what they're saying, the Raiders pretty much are making it known to a lot of teams who are going to ask about Josh Jacobs, they're letting him know that no, he's not available, which is a great sign. I don't want Josh Jacobs to get traded. I think he's a great player, and hopefully
Everybody's available for the right price.
Right, that's true. If they give us 3 first-round picks, hey,
If they gave us 1 first-round pick, I bet
they
you
give us
do it.
one first-round pick. Nah, if it was like 1 first-round pick, and it was like,
Come on now, they would pull the trigger on that.
you think so?
Josh McDaniels getting a first-round pick for a running back,
But from a good team though. I mean like a team like let's see, the Houston Texans. If the Houston Texans like, we'll give you a first-round pick, I'd be like, yes. Where do we sign?
gladly.
Where do we sign? Because we know that's probably going to be like a top 15, to top 10, top 5 pick. But a good team is probably going to be like what, early first, second rounder, late first round pick, which is cool. But hey, at the end of the day, we know what Josh Jacobs is, and he's probably arguably the best player at that position right now. You can make an argument for that. And it makes sense. Miami Dolphins they were linked to Dalvin Cook. Obviously, they lost out to the Jets, and now they're looking around to see who's available. I think
Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah, they asked about Jonathan Taylor, but from what I'm hearing, Colts are like asking for a first round pick, and they're like, nah, no one wants to bite on that because, and I like Jay Taylor as a player, but I'm not sure, and I'm not sure how much they're asking. We don't know what's happening behind closed doors, but they're just reportedly, the rumors are saying that they're probably asking for like a first round pick. Some teams are probably saying no to that. You never know. They might be asking for a first round pick plus a mid round pick. Then you'd be like, he wasn't healthy last year. And, and then he wants to get paid and no one's really paying running backs right now. So teams are going to be like, that's not really a good value trade right there. But
there is a team, though, that did get a value trade, and that is the Dallas Cowboys. They have officially traded for Trey Lance of the San Francisco 49ers. So Trey Lance is no longer a member of the 49ers. He is now a Dallas Cowboy. And look at Kyle Shanahan. You give up 3 first-round picks to move up for Trey Lance, and he had less than 400 passing attempts, and you gave up that much capital for him. Then you only give up and gain a 4th round pick out of all of that. So just terrible quarterback evaluation from the 49ers.
Yeah, that's tough for them. But I don't have any sympathy for the San Francisco
Absolutely
49ers.
Not.
But it's going to be crazy. Like, our defense is probably going to be looking good tomorrow because do you think he's going to play tomorrow?
Yeah, I was just going to say that. Do you think he's going to play?
I
doubt it.
Yeah, it's gonna be like what he just got traded.
Yeah,
he just got traded. Yeah, I'm not sure if he's gonna play. They might throw him out. I don't know. Nah, I don't think so. They're not gonna throw him out there. That's just that'd be cold blooded.
yeah. But no, it was interesting just because look, Kyle Shanahan, and I said it a few shows ago, and I'm gonna take criticism for it. He does this with the quarterback position, and he'll get ahead of himself. He got Jimmy Garoppolo, go championship, goes to a Super Bowl. Obviously, Jimmy G was unhealthy, so obviously they have to do their due diligence and get somebody in that room. Mm-hmm. So they give up 3 first-round draft picks and somebody who they thought was the future of the organization in Trey Lance. That ultimately fell through. He got beat out by 7th-round pick Brock Purdy. But now history's starting to repeat itself because he did the same thing with the Washington Redskins with RG3 and Kirk Cousins. He is just shown to get ahead of himself when he owes a quarterback money or a quarterback is due a ton of money, which Jimmy Garoppolo was due some money for San Francisco, and they wanted to go separate ways. They gave the keys to Brock Purdy. So I don't think that this is going to bode well for Kyle Shanahan. Matter of fact, I think the 49ers are on a downward trend because I don't think the quarterbacks are going to perform very well. So I don't know. It's going to be
man. That's that.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to watch the Niners this year for sure.
Yeah,
not that I really watch them, but
yeah, you have an argument about Kyle Shanahan, but I still think that he's one of the best offensive minds in football. It's just that it's hard, man. It's hard to find.
Hard. There's a thing to be said because even Josh McDaniels had an issue with it. I think there's a real thing of trying to be the smartest guy in the room, and Kyle Shanahan to me feels like he's one of those guys that he's just the smartest guy in the room. So he thinks. So I think he's just trying to, this is my system and I can make anybody succeed type of mentality. And unfortunately, there is a real thing of talent difference in the NFL. So I think Brock Purdy, there's going to be a lot more teams with a lot more film of him.
Yeah.
And it's just going to be a wait to see, but that's just my take on it.
Yeah. I mean, he's shown success with quarterbacks, but he just hasn't have a level of consistency with quarterbacks. It's kind of strange because people he does have a lot of respect in this league as far as an offensive minded coach.
Yep.
And for some reason it hasn't worked out, man. But yeah, man. What's the next topic?
And our final in other news is news out of the AFC West. Jerry Jeudy is going to be missing several weeks due to a hamstring injury. I think that's interesting. Raiders played Denver week 1, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
I think we all had that circled as a win, but now they're going to be without Jerry Jeudy, their number 1 receiving option.
Yes.
So another team that I don't think that marriage. Yeah, there you go. I don't wish injury on anybody, so I don't want to sound like I'm celebrating that, but
yeah.
I'm celebrating the fact that I think the Raiders are just going to win regardless of their health. But it's one of those other situations too where I don't think that marriage between the head coach and the quarterback is going to – I have this gut feeling, and I can't kind of put my finger on it, but I just don't believe that Sean Payton and Russell Wilson is going to be a marriage that is going to work. And I could be completely wrong about that, but there's something going on with that team that just doesn't feel right. So obviously it's going to be in our division, so we're going to be able to watch. Hopefully it's the downfall of the Denver Broncos.
See, the thing is, do you think, and someone brought this up a while back, a few weeks ago, do you think Sean Payton is overrated?
Let's put it, I mean, he had a Hall of Fame type of quarterback, right? And Drew Brees.
They went to the Super Bowl that year, and it was a tough time for New Orleans, and it was just like a perfect storm.
Yeah, no pun intended.
Yeah, and it's for real.
Come on, Pharaoh.
Man. No, but for real, like ever since that Super Bowl, he's kind of been like he's been there, but he hasn't some people will argue like he hasn't been that guy success wise since then. Like it's just been all right. Yeah, he's coached some teams to the playoffs. They've been good offensively, but they never really put together another team after that. So
we're gonna find out. Yeah, I mean, that's for sure. We're gonna find out.
I hope he's overrated. When I heard that, I was like thinking about it. I was like, oh man, I hope he's the most overrated.
Remember when we had like the Josh McDaniels, John Gruden conversation? Like, man, is this guy like a locker room guy? He's just made some statements in the media lately that I could just, depending on what kind of locker room they have out there in Denver. Obviously, I don't follow that team that closely, but depending on the type of players that are there, that could rub a lot of players the wrong way. You know, and this being his first year as head coach, I'm just kind of seeing this might. I honestly feel like this might be a year where they tear things down, and Sean goes out there and gets his guys.
Yeah, and on top of that too, like when he made that comment saying that last year was probably one of the worst coaching jobs he's ever seen, that rubbed people the wrong way. Like guys like Aaron Rodgers, who is now the
Nathaniel Hackett.
Now the Jets offensive coordinator or QB's coach, one or the other. But he obviously was like he didn't take that well, and you don't really hear coaches say something like that, especially like because it's like the coaching is like
a fraternity almost.
Fraternity, you know what I mean? So you don't really hear them talk down on other coaching. They just look, at the end of the day, they just make general statements like, hey, this team was not good last year, will improve, but he actually went at the coaching staff. So that kind of puts a bulletin board. It puts a bulletin on him, like it puts like a dart on him. Because now he has to perform as a coach. Because everybody's going to be looking at him.
And I don't know why you'd make that comment thinking like...
Yeah, because now everybody's going to be looking at you like, okay, you're that great of a coach?
I don't know. I'm saying, I just feel weird about that whole situation. We'll see. Obviously, I think he'll be the head coach before, I don't know. I don't know how to figure this situation out. Like, can they even get out of the Russell Wilson contract?
Yeah.
That's my biggest question is like, I could see Sean Payton being the guy that moves on from Russell Wilson.
Hey man, I hope everything backfires. I hope
I do too.
Because think about it, they gave up a first round pick for Sean Payton. You got Sean Payton saying crazy stuff like last year. I mean, the Broncos were bad last year. It wasn't like that. We're not going to act like they weren't bad, and the coaching staff didn't have anything to do with it. But it's just like, all right, you're kind of putting a lot of pressure on yourself and the team by saying that, you're pretty much implying that, okay, it's going to be way better this year because you're in town and you're going to be coaching these guys up. And
Guy's got an ego.
Yeah, definitely huge ego, but it is what it is, man. I hope everything backfires. I hope the contract for Russell Wilson, I hope they give him another extension, because I hated the Broncos growing up, the Chiefs, the Chargers. Yeah. I hated the Chargers too, but I think I hate the Chiefs.
I hate the Chiefs most.
I hate the Chiefs the most because I know Chiefs fans and
see, I hate the Chiefs, and then I hate the Chargers, and then I hate I literally don't even worry about the Broncos. I don't even think about them. The Chargers, I know, are like, we'll go back and forth. Their fans is just annoying.
Yeah.
The Chiefs is the big one, though. The Chiefs
I hated the Broncos too because I hated Mike Shanahan because Mike Shanahan hated the Raiders.
Yeah.
And you could tell he took everything personal. So I hated him because he would try to just, he would just do a little bit more than a regular head coach would do when they're winning or beating the Raiders. And the Chargers, I don't know.
Those days are long gone, though.
They're long gone.
The Broncos are like our small friend. That's the Broncos. So I don't worry about them. I kind of feel the same way about the Chargers. I think the Chargers are the Chargers. They find a way to lose games they shouldn't lose and win games that, they probably shouldn't. They're overrated. They get to the playoffs. It's a dud. They always have this roster that's built for a Super Bowl every year, apparently.
Yep.
And they always fall through somehow, some way. Injury, play calling, et cetera, et cetera. And then the Chiefs, man. The Chiefs are respectfully, that's the mountain I want to climb. That's the standard I want for the Raiders. I want us to be consistent AFC championships. I want us competing for Super Bowls. So right now that's the Kansas City Chiefs, and the division goes through them. So I've got my eyes set on the Chiefs this year.
Yeah, man. Hey, I'm excited for the season. I'm excited for the Cowboys Raiders game. It's gonna be fun to watch. We got until September the 10th or 11th.
Yep.
Around that time is when the season kicks off for the Raiders. Obviously, the season kicks off on Thursday, usually the previous week. But hey, man, we're ready for Raiders season. Make sure to leave a comment down below. Let us know your thoughts on the game, who you guys are looking forward to watch, the season. Leave a comment down below. We appreciate everybody coming through. If you guys are watching this live on the premiere, hey, we'll be in the chat. Just make sure to let us know what your thoughts are so we can talk some Raider football. Man, we appreciate the support, and make sure to like that button. You know what I mean?
So important.
Yeah, it's very important. We forget. We're just sometimes we just come on, we just talk football, and then we're like, we should remind everybody because they support us. We know you guys support us, but we just want to make sure that you guys hit that like button, hit that notification bell, and do all those things for us so we can keep coming back and talking Raider football. But we appreciate everybody coming through. Any last thoughts, Ray?
Nah, man. I let's wrap up the final preseason. Let's go in, break down Tuesday, 53-man roster, who made the cut, and who's going to be suiting up for week 1. So a lot to be excited for.
All right, man. Peace out, y'all.
Just win, baby.
Great Pharaoh. The gift of Troy is a fabulous fabric from the land of the 5 rivers.
Believe that the greatness of the Raiders would be in its future. Just win, baby.
Hello? You play to win the game.